Hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm Dr. Alan Beyer, Executive Medical Director at Hoag Orthopedic Institute, and well known to many of you as Doctor in the Dugout with our weekly radio show. Well, we're here today on TV, not radio, to introduce and welcome a new member of our practice at both Newport Orthopedic Institute and Hoag Orthopedic Institute, Dr. Joanne Zhang, a specialist in hand, wrist, and upper extremity injuries. Joanne, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Beyer.
So whenever we have a new medical staff person here to introduce to the community, we always like to take a couple of minutes to give them the time to introduce themselves, tell us where they're from, where they trained, how they wound up getting into the practice of orthopedic surgery, and in your case, hand surgery. So go ahead. Microphone and the TV camera are yours.
Okay, so I grew up in San Diego, so the goal was always to come back to Southern California to practice medicine. When I was in medical school at Duke, I did a short rotation on orthopedic surgery, and I fell in love with orthopedic surgery. I think there's something so nice about having, seeing a mechanical problem and knowing that there's something that you can do to fix it, whether it's a surgical option or a non-surgical option for the patient. In terms of how I got into hand surgery, the hand is a very delicate structure, as everyone knows. With hand surgery, we not only work with bones in the hand and wrist, but also the nerves and blood vessels. And so I felt that that would make me a much more well-rounded surgeon, and really wanted to pursue that.
So explain to our listeners, because I don't think everybody's familiar with how many years it really takes after that 4-year medical school commitment to do an orthopedic residency and then follow it up with a fellowship, which these days it seems like 95% of your colleagues who finish their residency go on to fellowship subspecialty training. Tell us a little bit about how much of a time commitment that was.
Yeah, sure. So after 4 years of medical school, you usually do a 5-year orthopedic surgery residency. I did my orthopedic residency at Boston Medical Center. So that was a level 1 trauma center where we saw all sorts of bad injuries come in, and we're involved in helping fix those. After the 5-year orthopedic surgery residency, then most people go on to do a 1-year fellowship. And so my 1-year fellowship was in hand and upper extremity. So we covered everything from hand, wrist, elbow, up to the shoulder. And that was at University of Chicago.
I think a lot of our people who live here in Orange County don't realize how lucky they are that the orthopedic delivery system that we've developed is really become almost a 100% fellowship trained faculty and staff. I mean, back when I started 40 years ago, I think I was the first guy to come to our area in Newport Beach and Huntington Beach who had fellowship training. Now, all of you who are coming out of residency are fellowship trained, and orthopedics has become such a super specialized practice that it's so much better for the patients to be able to see somebody who is expert in what it is that they're there for. We get a lot of jokes about, oh, you're only the left toe doctor or you're only the right elbow doctor. But in fact, that is providing better care for our patients because we are specialty trained in a certain anatomic area.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. I think the fellowship training is super important because obviously as medicine progresses, as science progresses, every field has so many new things that comes to each specific subspecialty. And in order to stay up to date and current and be able to provide the best care that you can for each patient, the fellowship, that additional year fellowship training really gives you all of the detail, all of the information that you need to provide what's best for the patient.
So let's dig down into hand and upper extremity surgery and treatment of conditions. You're really taking care of one of the most common and frequently injured areas of the body, especially in a sports-oriented population like we live in. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the more common conditions that you're called upon to treat day to day.
Sure. So I think some of the most common things that we see are arthritis, whether it's from repeated injury or from age as we use our hands and wrists. And then the other thing is nerve compression. Everyone's on their phones, on their computers these days, and so it's natural that a lot of us will get carpal tunnel syndrome or cubital tunnel syndrome, which is compression of your nerves at the wrists or in the elbows. And then the other thing that we'll see commonly is tennis elbow, which is can come from playing pickleball, playing tennis, or from just working out too much, doing too much on a daily basis and causing some wear and tear in the tendons.
And I think the important thing for our viewers to remember is that these problems don't necessarily mean we're going to the operating room tomorrow. There's a lot of conservative ways to deal with carpal tunnel syndrome and tennis elbow. Let's go over a couple of those. You know, I remember hearing a number of years back, and you could tell me if this is true or not, that in the old days, in the 50s and 60s, when secretaries were typing on the old Remington typewriters, they developed a lot of strength in their hands because those keys were hard to press. Then came the IBM Selectrics, which were much easier to press. And then finally, computer keyboards, which are nothing to press. So people are spending so much time on the keyboard, but not really getting their hands strong because those keys are so light to touch. I mean, is that contributed, do you think, to the incidence of carpal tunnel? It's kind of a deconditioning almost of the wrist and hand musculature.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that plays a role. I mean, also the ergonomics of keyboards have changed over the years. If you think of a traditional typewriter board, you know, you're kind of hovering with your hands in the air and, you know, click, clacking away. Whereas now, today's keyboards, you know, usually people are resting their wrists on their desks and kind of typing away on a keyboard or their laptop. And that puts a lot of pressure. You're holding your wrists up, which puts a lot of pressure and stretch on the nerves. And then you're also resting them on a hard surface and providing additional compression to the nerves. So things like being aware of your ergonomics when you're typing or using your phone. A lot of people like to be on their phone and, you know, holding their phone with their wrist extended. That sort of position can cause nerve compression. You know, people will sit on their laptops for hours at a time, not take breaks, and that's a lot on the nerve to handle.
And our kids are getting gamer's thumb from all these phones and joysticks.
Yeah,
too,
there's
aren't
gamer's thumbs. There's, you know, iPhone pinky, where people are holding their iPhones with their pinky to, you know, since the phones are getting larger and more heavy, and so they'll have pain in their pinkies, pain in the thumb from, you know, repetitive use.
Let's go to trauma a little bit because it's so common. Pickleball is so huge out here now. We have so many less tennis players and more pickleball players, and we're just being inundated with people who are coming in with pickleball injuries, usually from falls on the pickleball court. They're not wearing the right shoes. They try to get a ball that they normally wouldn't try to get on a tennis court because the pickleball court's so small. They think they can get to everything. What words of advice do you have for people when they fall and injure themselves on the pickleball court? Who really needs to just go home and ice and rest? Who needs to go to urgent care and go to the emergency room?
Sure. So obviously the big thing with any sort of sport is warming up appropriately, making sure that you are doing your stretches before you start so that you don't cause an injury by accident or by overstretching during the actual sport itself. In terms of when you actually do sustain an injury, if you notice bleeding, if you notice deformity, like your wrist doesn't look like the way it should, those would all be reasons to go to your urgent care or to the ER to see if there's, you know, they can get an X-ray, see if there's a fracture. If the bone's out of place, they can put it back into place in those situations. Usually if you see a lot of bruising, a lot of swelling, that can be indicative that there may be a non-displaced fracture. But, you know, in those cases, if you don't see anything grossly abnormal, it's safe to wait and, you know, put an ice pack on it, give it a day, see if it continues to hurt, and then either schedule a follow-up appointment with your doctor or go to the ER then.
And needless to say, loss of blood supply or loss of nerve to an extremity with any kind of injury,
yes,
that's an immediate trip to the
Absolutely,
ER.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that percentage of cases that you can't deal with by ergonometrically fixing their workstation or providing just comfort care after a minor sprain or strain at pickleball. The cases that do have to go to the operating room, be it in a freestanding surgery center or be it at the hospital, at Hoag Orthopedic Institute that we both work at. How important is it to you? What difference does it make to you to be able to be working at institutions where we've proven our outcomes are as good as they are. The patient satisfaction is as high as it is. The 5-star ratings that we get are as high as they are. How important was it to you to choosing your practice location post-fellowship to be working at a place where you know you've got the best shot at getting the best results for your patients?
Oh yeah, that is so important. I mean, I remember coming in for my interview with Newport Ortho and at Hoag and telling just, even the hotel staff that I was staying at, I was telling them, oh, I'm interviewing with Hoag and with Newport Ortho for a position, and they immediately knew who I was talking about. They said, that place, so-and-so from my family got care there, and it was great, they loved it. That speaks volumes in terms of what level of community service that these institutions have been able to provide to the community. In addition, it's so important to be able to work with a group that has that years of experience in dealing with orthopedic injuries. You know that everyone in the staff, be it from the nurses to the techs, to your medical assistants, everyone is very well versed in treating orthopedic injuries, and you don't have to worry that someone might not understand what I want for the patient and be unable to deliver that. So yeah, absolutely important.
So how does Joanne Zhang keep herself busy when she's not working in her newfound position? What do you do for fun and keep yourself occupied on the weekends and when you're not working late?
Yeah, so I own a German Shorthair Pointer, so my fiance and I are constantly out at the beach, at the dog beaches, parks, going hiking in the beautiful hills of Orange County. So we try to stay active, keep ourselves moving, just like everyone else here. The puppy is, adapting well to life in Orange County, but that's, easy enough to do.
Keeps you busy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Just tough to keep dry the last couple of weeks.
Right, exactly.
Well, that does it for us today. Thanks to all of you for listening. We're here at Hoag Orthopedic Institute, and Newport Orthopedic Institute is our practice. We're constantly bringing in the newest, finest trained surgeons to provide all of your orthopedic needs. We're the experts at getting you back to you. Please call us if you have any questions, and thanks again for listening today.